Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my Facebook page and my YouTube page. I'm going to get a little political on this issue, which will probably put me in Facebook jail. But I did some statistical analysis on my own, taking into consideration I've only been doing it for 20-some years. I took all of the states in the United States. I took the population count as of this last census and a couple years back. All of these census information is as of 2020. So I would venture to say they're pretty close to accurate. The totals of the populations for each individual state comes up with 330,598,493, and naturally, because it's a census, it's not all people that can vote. So I took it one more step forward, and I wrote down all of the total numbers of registered voters for every individual state. That came up with, the registered voters are naturally lower count than the population, only because, like I said, not everyone can vote, but you're still counted on the census. But nevertheless, the important part would be, hypothetically, the number of people that are registered to vote. Now, naturally, not everybody is going to vote, even though they're registered to vote. And or, hypothetically, they might not even get their ballot in on time, and or they might not even decide to go to the polling centers anymore to vote. So, the population of 330,598,493 total population of the United States. Versus the total number of registered voters. Now that's all of the states, that's all of the registered voters, I'm assuming legal voters here in the United States that should be voting, but not necessarily guaranteed at this point. Comes up with 213,799,467 total registered voters as of 2020. That equals the population minus the registered voters equals 116,799,026 not registered that are either too young to vote or not registered. So if you take all of the states that were...
Hi!
Sorry. Killed a little bug. Doubt shot, not kill. Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. I don't like mosquitoes. Sorry. If you take all of the votes, and this is a hypothetical because not everybody in every state is going to vote for one person or the other person, but hypothetically, if the Electoral College is on the majority, let's say the majority of the votes, that voted for re-elect Donald Trump or elect Biden. Hypothetically, if the Electoral College followed that criteria and said, okay, like Alabama said, voting for Trump. So I'm assuming that the majority, regardless of what that number is, the majority voted for Trump. Because if the majority voted for Biden, then they would have hypothetically, electoral voted for Biden. But because they did not, I'm using the maximum totals. So the maximum total for Alabama, for instance, is 3,708,804. So let's say, hypothetically, even though it might not be the total count for President Trump re-election, I'm going with the total count for both parties. So it's an equal count either way. If they voted for Trump, it's all Trumps. If they voted for Biden, it's all Bidens. So hypothetically, that's not correct, and I understand that. But the total number of votes out of all of the states that hypothetically voted for Trump was 82,271,630 total, versus everybody that hypothetically voted for Biden, which is 131,527,837. Now, if you take those totals, and I understand, like I said, I understand not everybody in that state voted for Trump, and not everybody in that state voted for Biden. So like I said, I'm using the total numbers. And these total numbers came from the Census Bureau and from each individual state, indicating these are the total numbers of population, these are the total numbers of registered voters, and these are the total number of non-registered voters. But nevertheless, this state voted for Trump, this state voted for Biden. So using those numbers as an explanation, not a hardcore fact, Trump lost. Now, I say this lightly. Trump lost $82, 86. Where did my totals disappear to? Trump's totals. Okay, so Trump's totals. Basically, Trump lost, hypothetically, by 49,256,207. Now, it's come to light in several instances, and it's now going to federal investigation because of that evidence that they have already found, that there has been a database that has skewed the totals. Basically, if Trump gets too many votes, approximately 3% of that gets shifted over to Biden. So if you take those totals and you take off the 3% from Mr. Joe Biden, total overall votes, that would leave 3,945,835.11 votes that should have, hypothetically, and I'm not saying it is, not until the final count is done by the National Guard and from the FBI and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So if you take that 3,945,835.11 and add that to Trump's total of 82,271,630, you add that, and that would come up to another total extension of 86 million added onto Trump's, with giving Trump a total win over 36,961,258.11 over Mr. Joe Biden. And I double checked and triple checked those numbers before I actually did this printout. And I'm not the one that came up with the population. I'm not the one that came up with the total numbers of registered voters. I'm not the one that came up with the total number of non-registered voters. I'm not the one that came up with the total number of states that picked President Trump, nor did I pick the states that actually voted for Mr. Biden. But the numbers are numbers, and if you do the math, you'll see that the math shows if there was not a 3% skew from that database called the Hammer and or the scorecard programs, which automatically skewed the vote back over to Mr. Biden, President Trump would be reelected by over 38,961,000 votes. So what is interesting is because the individual turned over the information to the FBI, and the FBI is now looking deeply into voting fraud, we shall see how all this pans out. Either there's going to be a lot of Democrats that are really, really not happy because this is going to flip it. It's going to flip it in President Trump's favor if, in fact, that 3% skew was added to somebody's databases. And right now I'm to understand that there's 5 or 6 states that are seriously in question. And so far, for what I'm to understand, there's like only 2 days into this audit, and I'm to understand that there's over 14 million that have already been flipped. Well, 14 million, 14 and 14 is 28. Well, that's a little bit less than half of the total win. So if you calculate the difference, it's going to look like the president-elect Donald Trump is going to win by approximately 50 million votes if the totals continue going the way they are. So with that being said, this is my today's rant, and I would be surprised if it stays online, and I'd be surprised if it stays on Facebook, and I'll be surprised, or I won't be surprised if it actually gets blocked. But I'm going to mail these calculations to the powers to be and let them know that they're not the only ones doing the calculations. Good afternoon, good evening. This is video number 2 of the attached to the first video because I ran out of space on my memory chip. So as I was saying earlier, if the numbers continue to go at the projection as what they're going at this point right now, there's a guesstimation of a win of approximately 50 million in President Trump's favor. If it wasn't for that quote-unquote database program skewing or hypothetically skewing the 3% over to Mr. Biden, the guesstimation is, or the projection is, approximately a 50 million count win. So as this continues to pan out, I'm going to continue tracking it further and will be continuing to add it to this spreadsheet because there are a lot of variable factors going on right here. That would be including the Social Security count, which I do not have access to right now, but I'm looking for it. This would be in regards to the registered voters for the individual states that may have passed on since the census of 2018 to 2020 count based on the state's records. So those numbers of registered voters more than likely may decrease or increase if the other non-registered voters, throughout the United States is 116,799,026 non-registered voters based on the states and the Census Bureau records. So in order to come up with some exact totals, there still needs to be more information added to this spreadsheet and calculated and extrapolated out for the exact hardcore numbers. But I'm not going to go to that extent. It's my understanding that the FBI and the National Guard is already doing that. It is my understanding that only a few states have at this point have already been scanned, because the actual voters document voting registration ballot had a special encoding on that particular print, and there are several million that have already been discarded because they were invalid ballots. That means somebody decided to print a bunch of documents, probably with a copy machine or possibly even a printing press. Nevertheless, they didn't understand or they didn't know about the secret encoding that could only be observed, monitored, scanned, and detected by the laser scanners. So I'm glad that they did that. That's an interesting form of security, which is a good process, because it's got to be encoded somewhere, somehow, in order to verify and validate whether or not that ballot is an authentic, original document and should be counted or should be discarded. So with that being said, if you like what I've got to say, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to know as soon as I post a video, which I will be doing my best to stay on top of this one, please hit the indicator button and notification button. That'll let you know when I post my next video. I am going to try to post one video per week, at least, maybe 2 videos per week. But this it's not my primary concern. It is a concern, not only for myself, but for my family, the future of the United States. If you have to lie and cheat in order to win, you're nothing more than a loser anyway. So if you have to lie and cheat in order to win, you don't deserve to be running the United States. And so with that being said, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the indicator notification button, and I will see you on my next video. God bless, have a great week, and we shall talk to you later.